Yo, baby, yo, baby, yo. Look, got my what's it called? Blizzard. Got my Blizzard on deck. Shout out DQ. They should sponsor your boy. I got a strawberry cheesecake. Bussin'. I need me some water. Yeah, we gotta start this thing off right. Gotta have that Aquafina on deck. Yeah. Alright, we got creepy Reddit stories. Let's go. Hey man, I was wanting to stream earlier today, but boy, oh my goodness, I was fatigued. I was tired, beyond tired. Like, I woke up this morning and I just felt groggy, super sluggish. I didn't record even. I probably only recorded half the videos I wanted to do today. Man, I was out of it. I was definitely not feeling it. But it's alright, we here today now. I told you I was going to be recording or going live every day. I don't care if we make it at 11:59. I'm finna be boom today. But without further ado, I hope everybody is doing very well. Blessings to all your families. Blessings to you. But let's go ahead and get it.
We went every year and this was the fourth time.
Hold on.
The Weather Channel called for severe. It feels pretty corny to start this by saying it was a dark and stormy night, so let's just say there was bad weather. I was on my way to a convention in Chicago with two of my good friends. We went every year and this was the fourth time. The Weather Channel called for severe weather, but we refused to miss our annual overnight trip. We all piled in my car for a 6-hour drive. The first few hours was fine, just raining and kind of humid. Then,
I don't even like driving, first off. Let alone it being a stormy, dark night. I don't like doing that. Couldn't catch me doing that. I hate driving. Oh my gosh. I have legitimate PTSD from driving in car accidents and stuff. Like, so much so, you might think it's weird, but I felt more safe on a motorcycle than in a car. To be honest, that's how bad it got. I feel more safe on two wheels than four.
and the typical Midwest severe thunderstorm had started. The kind where you just look down at the lines in the road so you don't end up in the ditch since you can't see anything else. Once when the lightning flashed, my friend swore he saw a tornado in the cornfield in the distance. We finally gave up and pulled under a bridge until the rain let up enough for us to see. We waited a good 45 minutes and we were running hours late from driving so slow through the storm. The rest of the trip was drizzle and that post-thunderstorm fog that has always felt creepy to me. There were hardly any other cars on the interstate since most people were too smart to be out driving, which just added to the creepy feeling. We didn't get to our motel until about 2 a.m. Since we were poor college kids, we never stayed at the convention hotel. Luckily, we found a little motel a 20-minute drive away that was dirt cheap. We stayed at this motel every time we came to the
What's good, y'all in the chat? Appreciate y'all stopping by. Love you.
convention. It was 3 stories tall with no interior hallways. All of the rooms were accessed from outside. Unfortunately, the cheapest rooms were on the 3rd floor, and the elevator hadn't worked any of the times we visited.
So as far as what you missed, since we're at the very beginning, these college students are going to a convention late at night, stormy night, with a possible tornado off in the distance. They knew they shouldn't have gone, but they're going anyway because they don't want to miss the convention. They finally get to the hotel at 2 a.m. They're broke college students, and they don't want to stay at the convention's hotel because they don't have enough money, and that's where we're at right now.
Checking into the motel in the middle of night was interesting. It was still foggy and drizzling out, but also humid and hot. There were only about 2 to 3 other cars in the dark parking lot, and the only lights were from the lobby and street lights. We walked inside and no one was at the desk. After ringing the bell for about 15 minutes with no response, we actually called the motel from my friend's cell phone. An older man answered and soon came out to the desk from a back room. We tried to negotiate a first floor room since obviously they were not busy. He was a jerk though and kept saying, "They're booked." There were only about 2 to 3 other cars there. Certainly some of the first floor rooms had to be available. Being exhausted, we took our third floor room and prepared ourselves to drag our suitcases up 3 flights of outside stairs in the drizzle and heat. As we left the lobby, the old man called out to us,
"You kids be sure to lock your door and don't ever answer it after dark."
He went back into the back room and then slammed the door.
Oh, this is probably gonna be like one of them paranormal ghost story type situations, yo. Can't punch ghosts in the face, yo.
God, that really creeped me out. We unloaded the car in the foggy dark parking lot and dragged our luggage to the stairs. As we came around the back of the building, we all saw the elevator. The out of order sign that was there before was now gone and the doors were open. The light in the elevator was the only light source on the entire back of the building. It seemed like something good finally happened to us on the trip. The elevator was working and we didn't have to lug all of our things up those slippery stairs. I remember thinking it was weird that the doors were open. Didn't elevator doors usually stay closed until you push the button? But whatever, it was better than the stairs. We loaded our luggage and got in. I pushed the button for the 3rd floor and the door started to close. The doors were the typical standard elevator doors, and right before they closed all the way, words appeared. Written in red paint or marker on the far side of the elevator so that it was only visible when the door closed, it said,
"Well, you're all screwed now. Sorry, suckers."
The elevator started moving. We all just stared at the door. My friend Chris from behind said the obvious thing we were all thinking. Guys, I think we're screwed. It took that dang elevator forever to get to the 3rd floor. With a ding, the door slowly opened. None of us moved. I think we were all waiting for something to come out of the fog or one of those sirens from Silent Hill to start. Nothing happened. The door started to close and my friend Amy quickly shoved her suitcase in the way of the door. We all scrambled out. The elevator door closed and we heard it go down to the ground level again, abandoning us to our fate. Slowly, we all 3 came around to the side of the building. Nothing was there but a long walkway open to the elements with doors along the left side. Completely terrified now, we crept towards our room, which was halfway down the hallway. We were almost there when we heard it, loud and clear in the night. It was that dang elevator returning to the 3rd floor. We sprinted to the room. Chris had the key and frantically tried to get our door open, as the other 2 of us stared towards the back of the building to see who would come around the corner.
Could it be me?
Click. The door was open and we bolted into the room. We locked every single lock on that door and braced our suitcases up against it for good measure. We stood inside listening for anything else. We heard nothing. Being the only guy in the group, Chris decided to look outside after a few minutes, but he couldn't see anything. I don't think any of us slept well that night, and we never stayed in that motel ever again. This encounter happened 13 years ago, and at the time I was 14 years old. My then best friend lived just down the street from me, and my cousin was dating her older brother, so I basically spent every day at her place. She lived on the 5th floor of a block of flats. It had 18 floors, so more often than not I'd just get on the elevator. On this particular day I was waiting on the elevator, and it was taking a while. Not so unusual. As I said, this building had 18 floors, so sometimes you had to wait a while if other people were using it. While I was waiting, a man entered the building and stood beside me waiting to get on the elevator as well. Not so odd, but something about this guy had me very creeped out. I can't say what about him made me so uneasy looking back, as he seemed like just a normal guy. He looked to be in his late 30s or early 40s with short dark hair, medium height and build, short beard and dressed well enough, but something about him just seemed off. I could feel his eyes on me as I continued to wait for the elevator. I'm a girl and I've always been small and looked younger than I was. Back then I was lucky if I was even 5 feet, and I looked about 11 or 12. I've had stranger danger and how dangerous people can be drilled into my head since I was little, and while it seems silly to be this terrified of a random man just waiting on an elevator same as me, I decided to still listen to my instincts. It was the best decision I have ever made. I casually walked to the stairwell, which is around the corner from the elevator. I walk in, and the second I'm out of sight and the door closed, I begin to run up those stairs as fast as I can. Now, back then I was fairly athletic. I did a lot of sports in my free time, so it didn't win me too bad to run up those stairs. About halfway up, I hear the stairwell door slam open and footsteps running up the stairs. I pause for a second, terrified, and look down the stairwell, seeing the face of the guy staring up at me from the 2 floors below before he begins to run up them. I run as fast as I can up the remaining floors, my legs burning from how fast I was running, barely able to catch a breath. I finally get to my friend's floor and exit the stairwell. I get to her door and begin to pound on her door, crying and begging her to let me in. She opens the door pretty confused, and I run inside, slamming the door behind me. So there I am, crying and shaking as she gets the story out of me. Her older brother, who was a 20-year-old guy and built really big, heard all of this, and he came out of his room to find out what the commotion was. He charged out of the flat and began to hunt the building for the guy, but he couldn't find him anywhere. I never saw that man from the elevator ever again. I don't know what he wanted me for or what he planned to do if he caught me, but I'm really glad I never found out. My first year of college was a real challenge for me. I'm extremely introverted, and while I do have friends that I spend time with, I don't make friends very easily. I'm simply too shy to approach others, and I'm no good at connecting with strangers. It's just who I am, and I'm okay with that. When I started classes that fall, I was the invisible girl. Never called attention to myself if I could help it. You know the type, I'm sure. There's a lot of people who specialize in invisibility. So I didn't really have a lot of friends that semester, just people I would call acquaintances. We got along fine, but couldn't really be called friends. Now at this time, I was battling my own issues too. When I was 16, I had some really bad stuff happen to me, and by no means was I over it. It was a major factor in my life. I went to therapy regularly and was treated for major depression, extreme anxiety disorder, and PTSD. I was walking a thin line trying to pull myself together and get on with life, while at the same time feeling very isolated around others. I avoided men whenever I could simply because I wasn't ready to let my guard down, and it was exhausting being on constant high alert. I was also rather paranoid. It's impossible to avoid potentially dangerous situations when living on campus and being the loner that I was. There were times when I simply had to walk back to my dorm in the dark or participate in a group project with men. I worked hard on my self-confidence, and while I eventually overcame my fears, at that time I was always on edge. I'm sure you can understand. One day I went to class in the humanities building. Not a big deal, but the classroom was on the top floor of a tall building, and I usually rode the elevator. That elevator was slow as crap, but still better than walking up 12 flights of stairs. I'm sure you guys get it. I get to the building, call the elevator, and then wait. To my surprise, when the doors opened, I was the only one who got in. That was a relief because of my paranoia. Then it happened. The doors were closing when someone stuck a hand in the middle, and 4 guys got in. This wasn't good. My anxiety hit the roof, and
That's what I was about to say. I was like, her anxiety is through the roof at this point. She thought she was good, and then all of a sudden, just 4 guys immediately. Exactly what she didn't want.
I backed myself in a corner, so I felt somewhat safer. I kept telling myself I was safe and that these men weren't going to hurt me, and I should just relax. Then, one of them turned to me, grinned maliciously, and then said,
There's only one girl in here. Let's get her.
And all crap broke out. I'm sure now it was a joke, but at the time I didn't take it that way. Not at all. When he made that comment, I panicked. I had my book bag on the ground in front of me. In my terror, I then picked it up and started swinging. When the doors finally opened, there were about 4 very surprised men either on the ground or huddling away from me while I stood in the middle, hyperventilating and still swinging. I have never seen anyone exit an elevator that fast, and I'm not talking about me. Those guys actually stumbled over each other trying to get away from me. It took me a long time to calm down, but in the end, it was a huge step in building my confidence. I'd been in a potentially dangerous position with 4 men, and I defended myself quite effectively. That was the beginning of reclaiming myself. So to those 4 creepy guys, whether you were making a joke or you were serious and you were actually going to do something to me, please stay away from me and don't ever come near me ever again. This takes place a few years back when I was in university, so basically young and dumb. There was a class gathering at a restaurant for a small Christmas party, and my friend Karen and I decided to meet up beforehand. We agreed to take the train and meet up at a certain stop instead of driving to save us the hassle. I stepped into a nearly empty train cart and sat down immediately, pulling out my iPod and turning up the music. It was cold and early in the afternoon, so the only people on there excluding myself was an elderly couple and a bundled up man sitting across from me. I dismissed the man and turned to my music until I felt an uneasy feeling. I looked up and saw him smiling a friendly smile. I nodded at him but ignored him. I held my purse tighter and slowly started to put away my iPod so I can make a break for it when my stop came. As soon as the train stopped, I stepped off and I started to speed walk towards the elevator to go above ground. The guy slipped in as I feared, and he was a big man that looked even bigger all bundled up, and I was a young petite girl, so I was even more terrified now. He smiled down at me and then
I would highly advise. I know it's common, especially nowadays, to walk around with music in public or whatever, but that is like probably one of the most dangerous things you could do because you're not paying attention. You're more so focused on the music or podcast that you're listening to out in public. Like, you can't hear anything. Your senses are deterred. If anything, at the very, very least, have one earbud in, but still be like conscious of your surroundings and vigilant, because you can't trust nobody, man.
said,
You have the most beautiful shoes ever.
I was so shocked I couldn't do anything but stare down, and I noticed I was wearing my favorite black stiletto heels. I muttered a quiet thank you and inched away from him in the confined space. He sighed and said,
You must have beautiful feet. I would do anything to have them.
I was freaking out on the inside, and I pressed myself up against the wall the best I could. He continued,
Do you want to come to my place? I'm sure I have more beautiful shoes for your beautiful feet. I promise I'll do anything for you.
At this point, I was so scared I didn't know what to do except stick my hand in my bag and grope around for the mace that my boyfriend bought me.
I don't know where people get off at thinking that that's just like the thing to say. I would guess that it probably worked before. That's why it's being said. But I've never seen anybody say something as stupid as that, and then it'd be, oh, thanks. Like, no, bruh.
Really hoping I wouldn't have to use it. The man began to smile, and then he said,
I'm pretty sure that I have a pair of red heels that'll make your black hair stand out even more.
I muttered a no thank you, and I was absolutely relieved when the elevator door opened. But in order to get past the door, I had to squeeze past the man who was positioned half in front of the door. He then grinned and leaned in for a hug, which I quickly dodged, fearing for my life. I'll never forget his angry, chilling eyes when I turned back to see if he was following. He remained by the elevator, smiling sinisterly and waving, still muttering about beautiful red shoes. Thankfully for me, my friend showed up, and at the sight of her, he fled down a flight of stairs. It's been a long time since this story happened to me, but still, I think I'm going to avoid elevators for a long time to come.
This is like the elevator creepy stories.
This experience happened to me a long time ago when I was very young, around 7 or 8 years old. So basically my entire family was throwing a reunion / New Year's Eve party at this huge hotel, and all of the adults decided to go down to the bar to drink, thinking all of us kids were asleep. Obviously we weren't, and we decided to go run out in the hallway to play a game of hide and seek. Yeah, real smart idea. Anyway, there were 6 children and we split into 2 groups of 3, each group hiding together so no one would wander off and get us all in trouble. When it was my group's turn to hide, I managed to get lost at different corners of the hotel, and being the child that I was, the thought of being lost was already frightening enough to me. After circling the floor of our room about 5 times, I decided it would be the logical thing to just go down to the bar where my parents were. Big mistake. I walked to the elevator, and when the doors opened, there was already a man inside. I didn't think much of it as this was a big hotel. It's no surprise that someone else had to take the elevator to the main floor as well. He asked if I needed to go down to the first floor too, and I said yes. The man was very tall and reeked of beer, and he had a dirty trench coat and sunglasses. I tried to maintain as little eye contact with him as possible, until he asked me a rather odd question. He asked,
"You're looking for your friends, right?"
I stood speechless, wondering how he knew what I was doing before. He then stated,
"You're the one who is playing hide and seek, aren't you?"
I then mumbled a scared, yeah, that was me, finding it really weird that he seemed to have been watching us play this game the whole time. We both remained quiet until the doors had opened to the 3rd floor, not the main one. I just thought the man hit the wrong button or something, so I reached to hit the first button when he reached for my arm and tried to drag me out of the elevator.
Oh, hell no.
I then froze up as he then said,
"Come on, I know where your friends are."
gesturing to the dead end of the hallway where all of the vending machines were. He walked closer to me, grabbing my arm and again attempting to drag me to the isolated section of the hall. I managed to twist away and bolted to the stairs, practically screeching the whole time. I managed to reach the main door only to run into my entire family, including the relatives I was playing hide and seek with, whom were looking for me the whole time I was with this man.
Wow.
Needless to say, I still get a little wary when I'm alone with a stranger in an elevator. I was in a junior college at a local university that is located in the city. The campus is about a mile wide, and I lived a little over a mile from it. I lived in an apartment building that was owned by the university, so only students lived there. It was known as the Poor Kids Apartments, and was the farthest from campus, and also in a bad part of town. The apartments had recently had issues with break-ins, so I was extra cautious about who I held the door open for. The door to the elevators was the one that locked when it closed, and only people who lived there had keys. But sometimes people held the door to save you needing to find your key. It was about 6 p.m. one night, and I was just getting back from class. I had planned on just stopping at my apartment and then leaving to drive to my mom's house for the weekend. I worked about 40 minutes away near my mom's house, so I tended to stay there on the weekends. As I was approaching the elevator, I noticed that someone was holding it open for a group of us. As I was walking to the elevator, I noticed that one of the people he held it open for didn't appear to be a college student. Not only was he much older, late 30s to early 40s, but he looked homeless for a lack of better words. He was dirty and was wearing dirty clothes. He obviously stood out to me, but apparently not the other people in the elevator because no one really watched him except for me. I watched to see what floor he pushed when he walked in. Well, he didn't push a floor. Big red flag. I was on the top floor, and I was one of the last people to enter, and noticed I was the only one to push that floor. Crap. If this guy doesn't get out on a lower floor, he might be up to something. As the floors open and people get out, I notice that he's looking at me and not getting off at any of the other floors. Before long, it's just me and him. I have to think fast because the fact that he didn't press my floor but entered before me, and the fact that he appeared out of place were both red flags for me. I decided I would let him get out of the elevator first because he would have the choice of left or right, and if he chose left, I could run right and get to my door. I got my key ready and let him out. He hesitated for a second and I pretended to be looking for something in my purse. He got out, went left. Awesome. I go right and right into my apartment, which was located close to the elevator. I glance left as I'm walking in, and I just see him standing in front of one of the doors and looking at me. I get into my room and lock the door right away. I grab the few things I need and keep thinking about how freaking weird that was. I start to think that maybe he was dating someone in one of the apartments, and I start to try to rationalize his behavior. But I knew it was weird. I grab my things and head back out and make sure to check the hallway before going back to the elevator. It was empty. Phew. I get back in the elevator and take it down to the lobby. I go to get out, and who do I see getting in with a group of new people? Well, you guessed it. The homeless guy. What the crap? Okay, so now I'm sure he's up to something. He sees me and his eyes get big. I go to pull out my phone because I knew I had to do something about this. I'm about to call the cops while walking out of the lobby, and I run into the security guard who watches our building after a certain time. I tell him everything. He decides to contact the police and have them waiting when he gets back down, and he said he would go up and try to find him. He tells me I did the right thing. I felt really bad that someone else could have potentially been in danger. I just hoped that he was only a thief and not something more dangerous. I didn't hear anything else about it, and I never ran into that same security guard ever again, so I can't say for sure of what happened. I luckily caught a good look at him, so hopefully my description helped, but he might have known I was going to do something and aborted his mission before he got caught. Either way, I always like that. You really never know what someone's real intentions are. This happened last year in October, so pretty much 3 months ago, but technically last year. Anywho, my girlfriend and I decided to make a Walmart run. She was having nuclear-like cramps and demanded that I take her to go get some ibuprofen. Rule number 1, you never say no to a woman that's on her period. It was already late and we got back at around 2 a.m. We live on campus as we're both college sophomores. I park in a parking garage that is about a 5-minute walk away from our dorm. Not very far at all. I parked on the 3rd floor, but the exit was on the 6th floor, so we decided to take the elevator. It was a Thursday morning, so everyone was in bed, so the campus was usually silent. As the elevator doors opened, there was a man standing there. I was taken aback because he was hulking, about 6'5", 280 pounds, muscular, and had that stereotypical look of a tough guy. I didn't move, but again, my girlfriend could have taken down an entire army of troops with the way she was feeling. She got on right beside him, and I followed. We rode up to the 6th floor, and the guy began to make small talk. He asked about our majors and where we lived, how we liked school, etc. He was pretty decent. All the while, I forgot to press the button of where we were supposed to get off, so instead we just rode the elevator up to the 9th floor, which was in the parking garage office sector. There was really nothing but offices up there. My girlfriend and I awkwardly laughed about it. When we got to the 9th floor, we expected the man to leave, but he just stood there. He was waiting for the doors to close and said he'd follow us down and make sure we got out okay. I suddenly got creeped out, and I could tell my girlfriend was too because she tucked herself behind me. I'm only about 6'1", 170-ish pounds with the arm strength of SpongeBob SquarePants. But instead of hitting the 6 button...
Okay, that's another thing that I don't understand is like, I understand everybody doesn't do martial arts, but I believe everybody should learn how to do it, especially if you want to protect your girl. At least have some know-how to protect yourself, or at least for your loved one. Not just be a body shield and get waxed. I was raised different. I grew up in a boxing family and did martial arts all my life, so it's like it comes to me different that I couldn't imagine myself not being able to protect my person. That strikes me a little weird that you wouldn't want to do that for yourself.
He randomly hits the 3, and in my state of shock, I just blankly stare at him. My girlfriend realized what he did and immediately tried to hit the 6, but we had already passed the floor. So she reached out again, but the man grabbed her hand. His face suddenly changed. He no longer smiled pleasantly or grinned courteously. The look of malice on his face will forever haunt me. I intervened and I pulled my girlfriend back. The elevator arrived on floor 3 and we both bolted out of there. Luckily, we were on the same floor as my car. The man from the elevator gave chase for a few feet, but once we were in my car, he went off around a corner. We drove to the campus security station and told them what happened. It wasn't an hour later that they had caught the guy and arrested him. He was out on probation and apparently he was on something and just messed up in general. But that didn't stop my girlfriend and I from making late night trips after that. That really freaked us out for a while, and we didn't use the elevator for a really long time. Only the stairs. When I was 17, I was renting a unit in a decent condo building in downtown Toronto while I went to school. Most of the people who lived there were older people who had lived in the building for years, and they all seemed to know each other, so people often chatted in the elevator and lobby. Anyway, one time I'm riding the elevator like normal, and the short bald man about 60 years old gets on. We nod at each other like normal and I'm pretty much just zoning out. Then all of a sudden this dude jumps up, snaps around to be facing me, and starts screaming the following things at me.
Who the heck are you?
And then he basically starts accusing me of being in some sort of nefarious organization that I've never heard of in my life. Mind you, I'm a 6-foot teenager and he's a tiny old man. I really had no idea what to say to this guy, so I basically told him to screw off and stop yelling. He continues screaming random nonsense. Lovely. We go back to silence. The elevator stops and another old guy gets on. As if this scene couldn't get any more surreal, these two old guys start chit-chatting. They're clearly old friends. This guy was literally screaming random crap in my face seconds before, and was now talking like it was the most normal thing in the world. I'm seriously doubting my own sanity at this point. The next stop, the crazy dude gets off the elevator, so now it's just me and the crazy dude's friend. I turn to him and ask who his friend was because he just screamed abuse in my face for no reason. Well, his response? He laughs and then tells me, yeah, he's like that. What the crap? The very next day, I went to the condo office and tried to report him, but all I really had was a description and a floor. So basically they told me to try to find out his name and maybe they could find out what's going on. I'm pretty sure I never saw him again while I lived there, but it was definitely my craziest moment of living in that city. I was about 13 years old when this incident occurred, so it was around 8 years ago. Me and my family were on vacation in Orlando and we were staying at the Nickelodeon Hotel. Very, very cool place. Nice water parks and nice rooms. I was with my family, my mom, dad, brother, 2 sisters, and me. I'm the oldest. We were at Universal Studios for the day and got back rather late. On the way to our room, my parents were carrying all the merchandise we had bought, so they kinda fell behind and me and my 2 sisters all got ahead of them. My parents and my brother were behind us. The elevator was just around the corner. Me and my sisters got to it first. The elevator opened just as we were walking around the corner. As we were walking around the corner, a man stepped off the elevator. I barely got a look at him because as soon as he saw me and my sisters, he immediately got back on without missing a beat. I should have known that was a bad sign, but unfortunately I was a little slow back then, so it never occurred to me that this guy was trouble. Plus, my parents weren't there to see the man, so they never stopped us from getting onto the elevator.
See, this is why I say a good trap is a trap you don't see. A good trap is a trap you don't notice until you're caught. But when you're so naive and so unaware, they just all happy clappy, you get caught up because there's just evil people out there, man.
Elevator.
Gotta be vigilant.
My sisters were rushing to get on the elevator because they were at the I want to press that button age. We all get on to see that the man is standing with his head facing the ground and both hands behind his back in the back of the elevator. He was very creepy looking. He had brown hair that reached the middle of his neck and looked like he hadn't showered in weeks. He looked like he was in his late 40s or early 50s because he had many wrinkles on his face and a creepy grin. He was wearing black jeans, a red, black, and white flannel, and a black turtleneck underneath. Keep in mind, we're in Florida, and this was a hot night, so it was weird that he was wearing all these layers. My youngest sister goes to press the 4th floor button, but all of the buttons were lit up already. I wish I could say that's what made me realize we were in trouble, but it didn't click just yet that the guy had pressed all of the buttons. I held the door open for my parents and brother, and my mom looked at the guy. I will never forget the face that she made. She had a huge smile on her face while looking at my brother, but when she looked at the man, that smile instantly dropped. I saw the look of terror in my mom's face. Even my dad gave the guy a strange look, like he knew to watch out for him. That was the moment when I realized this man was up to no good. The elevator doors then closed. My parents stood on each side of the man. Each were staring at him, just waiting to jump into action in case he made a move. My brother asked aloud, "Why did you guys press all the buttons?" And the older one of my two sisters, still completely oblivious to what was happening, then blurted out, "That guy did it," and pointed right at the man. My mom then let out a nervous giggle. The elevator was slow, but finally got to the second floor. The man quickly got out of the elevator and went down to the hallway. As soon as he left, my mom quickly closed the doors and we continued up. We stopped at the third floor, closed the doors, and then got to our floors on the fourth floor. My parents made sure we stayed with them this time. We got to our room, and that is when my parents started to freak out. My dad called the front desk to warn them about what happened so they could check it out. That was the last we ever saw of that man. We don't even know if the people at the hotel found him. God only knows what he was up to. Me and my roommate are females in our late 20s. We're best friends. We just moved into this apartment and yesterday was our 1-month anniversary of living here. It's in Ontario, GTA, great neighborhood.
Cook Unity is a direct-to-chef marketplace.
Every single one of these stories have like a creepy ending on the elevator.
Not a bad area. The building is in great shape but old, and many of the tenants have told us they've lived there for 20 plus years. We were assured the locks were changed before we moved in. I have a key, as does my roomie, the old couple that takes care of the building, and the general maintenance guy. I was the last to leave the apartment around 8 a.m. and I locked the door. My roommate got home around 4:30 p.m., unlocked the door, changed, and left again to run errands. We both got home again around 6 p.m. The first thing I did was go to my room to change out of my work clothes, and I noticed that my closet looked kinda messy. I had a small box of knickknacks that looked like it had fallen into the floor of my closet. However, the box was then put back up, and some of my dirty clothes from my basket were inside. It looked like someone had rummaged through my dirty laundry and tossed clothes out of their way, which probably caused the box of full stuff to fall in the first place. On top of that, brand new clothes I had just purchased were still hung up, but hanging inside the box, like someone was quickly sliding clothes on the clothing bar and it flipped some into the box. Because I'm very neat and tidy, I knew right away that this wasn't right. I didn't do this. Did my roommate do this? No. Why would she do this? She wouldn't do this. If she needed something, she'd ask. Did I do this? Maybe I threw my pants in my closet and it landed in the box. Maybe I did leave this stuff on the floor. Oh well, weird. But anyways, essentially my inner dialogue. Cut to about 9:45 p.m. I'm in my room and all of a sudden I hear my roommate call my name loudly and in a tone of voice I've never heard before. I go to her room and then she said, "I found the gift you left me." I say I don't understand. The present in my pillow. I look at her from the hall and I say I have no idea what she's talking about. I go into her room and on her bed is a dildo. It's mine.
Nah.
I grab it and say, "That's mine. Why is it in here?" She then said, "It was in my pillow. You didn't put it there?" I tell her that it was mixed in with my laundry basket. That's where I leave it to remind myself to wash it within a day or so. Now the wheels are turning and things are coming together. Someone must have let themselves into our apartment with a key, went into my room, looked through my dirty laundry, found the sex toy mixed in there, and put it inside her pillowcase so she'd find it when she went to bed. After being in shock for a few minutes, the reality sunk in and I started to cry. Someone had access to our apartment for at least the last month. We decided to talk to the building managers, and while they seemed to want to comfort me because I was an emotional mess, the husband mostly played it down, saying it was probably a joke. And did we give a copy of the key to anyone? I think it was part of the culture/age that made them downplay it. We did call the cops and they came within an hour or so. They all took our info and we told them the full story and they had a look around. Honestly, they can't really do much, and I figured that. At least we have a paper trail. I definitely mentioned the handyman guy as the one they should talk to. They're going to follow up with some residents and the building staff. I also watched the property manager and the handyman change my locks this AM. If anything seems out of place, then it's very clear it's either the staff or someone who has access to their apartment/keys.
You made it. Well, I made it too, because just barely made the threshold of, well, right before 12. So, thanks for stopping by. Appreciate you. Much love. So, we're on creepy Reddit stories, and a lot of these Reddit stories have been elevator induced. A lot of them have been in elevators, probably besides this one. This is like the only one.
We're going to be getting a camera that we can attach somewhat discreetly, and hopefully it never catches anyone that shouldn't be in our apartment. To start off, I'm a 25-year-old stay-at-home mother of 2, and I no longer feel safe in my apartment. When we moved in almost 3 years ago, I put a second lock on our door. Our daughter was only 2 at the time, so we put it on there to keep her in, but now I'm convinced it's helped keep someone out. A few months ago, something very strange happened, and I didn't think too much about it at first, but it slowly made me feel unsafe and very paranoid. Someone has been trying to open our door. The first time it happened, my daughter was not in school yet, and my son was only a few months old. My partner works different hours every day, but usually will let me know around the time he'll be home so I can unlock the top lock so he can let himself in with the key. My daughter was 4 at the time and will usually greet her father at the door when he gets home. This night, it doesn't seem she greeted him, but someone...
Just a quick question. Where do I recommend a video is not a movie and music video? Are you talking about on Patreon, or if you want to just recommend one now for that, or what do you mean? How do you mean? I mean, you could just put it right here. I'd just screenshot it, but there's a community section in the Patreon where the 3 bars are up at the left corner, where it has different categories as far as what you could recommend. Because I'm going to be doing, over the weekend, a lot of Patreon videos I got to upload. I got to upload a bunch, actually.
else at the door. I was sitting on the couch with my infant son and I thought I heard someone try to open the door, but it stopped because it was locked, which is normal. Sometimes my partner will try to open the door before unlocking it. My daughter heard that and ran to the door. For some reason, this time she decided she would unlock the door and open it to greet him. I hear her open the door and then shut the door. I was about to scold her for opening the door by herself when she came in and told me. It wasn't Dad. I was very thrown off by this. She said it in a sweet, innocent voice like it's just another thing, but I got kind of freaked out and I went and locked both locks to the door and I asked her if it was the neighbors. She told me no, that it was a guy. She didn't really understand why I was asking these questions. I told my partner about it and we told her the importance of never opening the door by herself ever again, and now I keep that top locked. I kinda put it out of my mind and wrote it off as a weird accident. A few weeks later, I felt like I had heard that ever familiar sound of the door trying to open but being locked again, but just trying not to have it get to me. One night around 12:30 a.m., the kids were in bed and my partner and I were watching some late night TV. We heard someone again try to open the door, but this time they rang the doorbell and lightly knocked. My partner looked out the peephole and saw 3 men. I told him to absolutely
grab the blick. Grab the blick, call 911. Be like, there's going to be 3 dead people at my doorstep. Bye. Click. Boy, I wouldn't even open the door. I let it ring, boy. What? Right through the door, hollow tips flying.
not answer it, and he said they left. I went to the window and looked outside, but I never saw anyone leave.
So it doesn't fit on any category. It's a Korean show. It's hilarious. Jack Black is. Oh, okay. So it's like a show, like a sitcom or something like that. I mean, I can make a category for that. I mean, I could just like I said, you can just put it here in the chat, and I could just screenshot it and, yeah, just put it here in the chat, and I'll just screenshot it, so then I could just remind myself to check it out.
which made me believe that they may have been sitting in the stairwell waiting for us to answer the door. I felt like calling the police, but I wasn't completely sure about telling them. Someone rang the bell and tried to open the door. I really didn't think that's something they would even care about, so I didn't. I started to become a bit more paranoid, and honestly, I felt a bit targeted. I'm sure that sounds silly, but we've lived here for 3 years, and only in the past few months has this been happening. Well, it's still not over. The scariest time is coming up. So about 2 to 3 weeks ago, my partner had another late night. This time it was almost 3 a.m., and we heard a sound. Now, our daughter is now 5, but sometimes she'll have...
I don't know what state they live in, whatever the case is. Second Amendment. Second Amendment. Second Amendment. Second Amendment.
nightmares, and she'll come to us. When she does this, she usually will jump off her loft bed and run to her door. That night we heard the sound of what we thought was my daughter waking up and running to her door, so my partner opened her door to see what was going on. He then looked at me strangely, and right when that happened, there was a giant thud at our door, and then another running sound. We realized then that it was someone running on the stairs outside. My partner looked through the peephole and I looked outside, but neither one of us saw anyone. That night I took my kids into our room, locked the bedroom door, and pushed something heavy in front of the door, and after having a panic attack where I thought I might actually need medical attention...
See, I would set up like cameras. I know they're in an apartment, but you could still set up some cameras. Either set up cameras right at the door. Well, I would set up like 2 or 3 different cameras, and depending on like what floor they're on. So I know every apartment, if you're in like a 3-level apartment or whatever, I set one right outside the window that'd be facing outward towards the vehicles. Set one right up at the door, and then probably set one up like on the balcony outward facing around the side so you could see. But there have to be some type of repercussion for that, because I need to capture these people's faces, their vehicle, something, so I can get to the police. Get them.
I silently cried myself to sleep. We got a hold of the landlord the next morning, and were told that she would try to get someone to patrol the area. Since then, I don't open the door for anyone other than people I know, and nothing else has really happened until today, which is why I'm posting this right now. I had just gotten out of the shower, my daughter's at school, my partner's at work, and my son was in his pack and play. I was trying to get dried off when I hear knocking at the door. I'm not expecting anyone, so I'm not going to answer it. I then hear the door try to open, and I didn't really know what to do. I'm sitting there naked, but I'm so tired of this, I put on a robe and grab a knife. But when I looked out the peephole, no one was there. I'm officially looking into moving. I cannot handle being here anymore. I feel very unsafe and violated that someone keeps trying to open our door, especially with my kids here.
That's crazy.
It's time to get out.
I'm glad that they kept locking the door. I'm a person that locks.
This
every
happened
door,
a week ago, and
closes every door. Make sure every door is secure behind me. I have like severe PTSD with like people being behind me. I don't like that mess at all. I don't like to be around any overly crowded spaces. Social battery on 30% by the time I leave out the door. Can't do it. I gotta secure everything, gotta lock everything up. We got a gym in my apartments, right? But it's kind of sketchy for me because there's 2 ways to come into the gym. It's like it's not huge, but it's like a normal box. But there's 2 ways to come in. But the wall that faces from the side that I come into the door, on my side of the apartments, the treadmill that I get on is faced towards the wall away from the door that I come in. So I get a little paranoid because you can't see behind you, and people could just walk in, and the door is always open, so you can't hear anybody like walking in until like if they rustle or make some noise. So I'm always looking back behind me every time I'm like jogging or running or walking or whatever, because I can't do it. I cannot do it.
And I just decided to share it. To start this story, I need to mention that my parents are separated.
Nah, it's not a ghost. It was definitely some people. So she said that she saw 3 strange men at the door earlier in the story.
And live within walking distance of one another. Now that that's out of the way, let's begin. I was going to my dad's house to get a spare Xbox controller, as I had a friend over and only had one at my mom's house. I told my friend that I'd be back in 5 minutes and set off into the night. I assumed my dad would be home as it was 6:30 and he usually gets off work around 5. I rang the doorbell. No answer. I wait about a minute. Still nothing. I decided to go around back and go in through the back door. As I go into the alleyway, I feel off. I got that feeling like nothing good would come at the end of it. My paranoia got the best of me and I went back to my mom's house. After my friend calling me a wuss, I grabbed a flashlight and my friend went along with me. As we approached the alley and turned into it, the light revealed nothing. My friend hit me lightly and called me a wimp. We went inside and I immediately wanted to leave. A quick glance at my friend revealed he felt the same. We went to the living room and got the controller. The staircase to my room is in the living room. I had turned the flashlight off, but I felt an overwhelming compulsion to shine it in the staircase. When I did that, it revealed a man appearing to be in his 20s with piss yellow teeth smiling at us.
See, dude, your body, I mean, it's your spirit. Your spirit could feel like other people's spirits around, or when something is really off. I'm telling you, like, as a kid, I used to carry around like anywhere from like 7 to 4 knives on me. I had weapons on me all the time. I was just like, if I'm getting jumped, if I'm whatever, somebody getting stabbed, something finna happen. Somebody gotta die. I was like, heck no. I wasn't big neither. I was small. I was like 5'4" in high school, yo.
He was, I assume, 5 steps up the stairs. I wanted to cry. I was so scared. I wanted to run, but I was frozen in fear. My friend, bless this moron's heart, shouted.
Oh, did they just released their music video? Oh snap! I might have to do a. I'm actually about to write it down right now. After this live, I'm about to go ahead and check that out so I could put that on Patreon. Yeah, I appreciate you for telling me. That's dope. And hello to you too. Says when me and my husband got married, we rented an apartment in a not so good area because we didn't want to. Wait, I hate how this heart is in the want to live with our families. There's several times at night we'd hear the same thing. What, somebody like trying to enter into your house? That's crazy. I couldn't do it. I could not do it. The apartment had been vacant for a long time before we moved. And from neighbor's story, gangbangers used to go in at night and use the apartment to get high. Yeah, that's a sketchy situation, very sketchy, because you never necessarily know when it comes to gangsters, because it could be one or two things. Either you could be cool with them to where they just don't mess with you or whatever, or they be complete asses and they do everything in their power to disrupt your peace.
What the heck are you doing here? The man's smile then faded, and he motioned for us to come closer. Yeah, no thanks.
That's good that you
We ran
did
out of the
that.
front
That's
door
good.
and began shouting for help. One person stepped out of their house with a handgun, but the man was nowhere to be seen, as cliche as that sounds. We called the police and they searched the apartment. And, well, searched isn't the best word, as they immediately found the man on the staircase leading to my dad's apartment. I have no idea what would have happened if I went down in the alley that night. Was he there? What would have happened if I went alone? I'm not really sure, and I don't want to find out. I'm just really glad that me and my friend got away okay. I'm a 22-year-old female, but this happened when I was 13. I'll start off with some necessary background information. When I was 13, my aunt lived in a huge apartment complex with 150 plus units within the same city as my mom and dad. I would visit her all the time just to spend time with her. Her complex had a great park and a swimming pool. I was also very close to some of the neighborhood kids that were around my age. This was during the summer of 2007. I was going to 7th grade that year, and this was the summer I stayed with my aunt to get out of my house.
2007? Wait.
My aunt's apartment was on the bottom floor on the very mom and dad. I would visit her all the time just to spend time with her. Her complex had a great park and a swimming pool. I was also very close to some of the neighborhood kids that were around my age. This was during the summer of 2007.
And
I was going
2007, what? I was in 6th grade? Oh wait, no. I was in high school. Oh my gosh. Yee.
going to 7th grade that year, and this was the summer I stayed with my aunt to get out of my house. My aunt's apartment was on the bottom floor on the very back corner of her building. The buildings in this complex were surrounding the park and pool I frequented to create a sealed-off community with 2 exits to the main road. The buildings were 3 stories high with 6 apartments on each level, all connecting to an outside corridor which connected to the stairs. Now that that's cleared up, here's what happened. It was a particularly sunny day at the complex, so I decided I was going to go outside and see if any of my friends were outside so I could hang out with them, instead of wasting the day away inside. I changed into shorts and a t-shirt and headed out my aunt's apartment. I made my way down the corridor, came from underneath the stairs, and began walking into the park. I only made it about halfway when I then hear,
Hey, you!
loudly from a corridor 3 stories up. I look up and see a face, but can't really make it out.
Did you know paying your bills
No, I
on
didn't
time
know.
raises
I'm gonna get YouTube Premium soon. Trust.
I could tell it was male, but his voice sounded like a kid's voice, and he looked like a kid from where I was. I then pointed to myself and shouted back, "Who, me?" He said,
Yeah, you. Can you come up here for a minute?
I began to stop for a minute to think about the situation. My 13-year-old mind just chopped it up that he was one of the neighborhood kids wanting to talk or something. So without another thought, I headed up the stairs towards where I saw him. I finally get up there to see a black man around 35 to 40 years old sitting on the steps waiting for me. He's dressed in a striped polo shirt, khaki shorts, and those sandals that make you think of Jesus. He legit looks like an oversized 5-year-old. As soon as I saw him, my whole body felt dread. I'm sure my face looked confused, and I then blurted out, "What do you want?" He starts gawking about my hair and asks me why I dress the way I dress, and keeps suggesting I should go in his apartment so he could show me around.
What are you talking
The
about?
creepiest thing is how he looked at me when he suggested it. It was the creepiest expression I've ever seen someone make. The expression is hard to explain, but it led me to believe that, even at 13, he had sinister plans once in the apartment. I quickly said that my aunt was expecting me, and that I needed to get back to her apartment or she'd come looking for me and I'd be in trouble. He then tried to ask what number apartment it was and if he could escort me there. I was shocked at the thought of that. I then hastily said, "No, I can make it there on my own, but thank you anyway." He then just looked at me with a blank stare for a few seconds, like he was thinking of what to do next. Then his facial expression was now clearly disappointed, and
Why are
before
you
he could say
sitting
anything
next to
else, I sprinted down the stairs and ran right back to my aunt's apartment. I didn't know if he'd seen where I went. I didn't know if he followed. All I know is I didn't give him the chance to play out his sadistic intentions, whatever they were. I told my aunt since she had seen me lock all of the locks on the door and screen door as well. She called the cops and I made a statement, but since he never touched me or physically harmed me, there wasn't much they could really do about it. After that, I made sure to never go up any more stairs unless I for sure knew the person, and to stay away from the area where his apartment was for the rest of the summer. I don't know what would have happened if I had not thought on my feet and stayed on those stairs longer than I did. I'm really glad that I was a smart enough kid and trust my intuition. Who knows what would have happened if I didn't. A couple of years ago, I was living with a few friends in a pretty ratty apartment. Long story short, they became real ding-dongs, throwing weird parties, having weird people over, etc. So I looked around for places to live and found a great pricing on a sweet little loft apartment by the beach. It was somewhat pricey, but in my range. Basically, I did all the applications and ended up being accepted into the building. I met with the landlord. He was a bit of a weird-looking fellow. Young, worry, maybe mid-30s. All around though, he was a nice guy, but he just gave me the willies. I ended up moving in a few weeks later, got everything situated and moved. Was loving the new digs. A couple days in, I had a few girlfriends over for a housewarming. Was a nice little get-together. Pretty fun party. Next day rolls around. Knock knock at the door. Landlord. He had news that a few of the other tenants were having issues with the plumbing, and he wanted to check out my hot water heater, which was located in the bathroom. I let him know that everything seemed copacetic, but he wasn't having it.
I just want to take a look to make sure you don't have any problems in the future.
At the time, he seemed like a super sweet guy, so I had no problems letting him go Mr. Fix-It on me. Little did I know, Mr. Fix-It became a weekly character. Every Monday/Tuesday, he would arrive like clockwork and have a task to complete. The range of my household problems now exceeded to the bathroom, the bedroom, living room, and now the hallway. I never found anything out of order, but according to him, there was always issues.
Of course.
I never took umbrage with him about it, but we had some words a few times about the timing of his arrival. Sometimes I'd be ready to hit the road and I'd have to wait around 5 to 10. Was just a little annoying. So one morning I'm getting up, I go to the bathroom, sit down for number 1. It's still somewhat dark in the bathroom and I notice the sink mirror across from me. There's a very, very teeny tiny red light at the top right hand corner. It was a reflect.
I knew they were gonna set up cameras. Freaking weirdo, bro. Oh my gosh. Yeah, if you ever see like cameras, whether it's a hotel, your own place, whatever the case, call 911 so you could catch that man in the act. Trace him down.
From a tiny, tiny hole in the ceiling. After finishing up, I got up, turned on the light, and checked it out. After a little bit of fiddling, I pulled out a pencil-thin snake camera out of the wall, attached to a battery pack in the back. The level of creepiness was on a whole nother level. Everything made sense all at once. I put the camera back. Now that I'd found the source of ultimate perversion, I needed to find the others. A few hours into the search, I had uncovered 7 additional cameras, including 2 more in the bathroom. The first I'd found had a direct shot at the toilet, the second the shower, and the third the sink. The battery packs attached to each of the 7 I found had a lasting time of 48 to 72 hours.
Damn.
They were all rather large, so the amount of time taken to install them would have been pre-moving in. So this guy was just setting up for me. I reported it to the authorities. My landlord was arrested and the building was searched for more. Well, there were about 50 other cameras found.
Oh my god.
The guy ended up pleading.
What? So there was technically about 60 cameras in her apartment. That is crazy. I mean, that would the timing, oh my, why are people so weird, man? Oh my gosh. I'm glad he's caught.
Innocent and getting off on the grounds that it was his property and he needed to keep surveillance to assure safety. Complete BS. He saw no jail time or fines. A few of us in the building tried to get his landlord license revoked, but
are you serious?
So the amount of time taken to install them would have been pre-moving in. So this guy was just setting up for me. I reported it to the authorities. My landlord was arrested and the building was searched for more. Well, there were about 50 other cameras found. The guy ended up pleading innocent and getting off on the grounds that it was his property and he needed to keep surveillance to assure safety. Complete BS. He saw no jail time or fines. A few of us in the building tried to get his landlord license revoked, but that didn't go anywhere. Anyway, to that freak show of a landlord, I really hope that I don't encounter him ever again. What a sicko.
How does that make sense? Where do you live where they just allow that? No jail time, no fine, no nothing. Just overnight in jail, that's it. That's snooping.
This just happened 2 days ago on a Tuesday night, August 19th, 2014. It wasn't traumatizing and it might not be a story I'll remember to my grave, but it's still fresh enough in my mind for me to remain creeped out 2 days later, which isn't normal for me since I myself am slightly creepy and I try to take it as much as I dish it. So I live in an apartment building and my apartment is the only one at the end of a hallway that houses a light that either turns on at night or doesn't, illuminating the hallway into normalcy or forgetting it in an anxiety-inducing pathway of pitch-black darkness. On this particular night, of course, the light didn't turn on, but I didn't notice because I almost never do anyway and wasn't expecting company to come by. It's just my roommate and I, and it's around 1 a.m. and we're catching up on the latest episode of American Ninja Warrior that we had missed on Monday. Cue ominous, oddly gentle knock on the door. We have a large window right next to the door that, when the hallway light is on, it always allows us to see people.
The next place I'm moving into, I'm having surveillance cameras. I mean, I be in a gated community, but I don't care. I needs to know. I have a thing with people knocking at my door. I don't like it. I mean, of course you can knock at the door, whatever, but I don't like it. It gets me heavily on edge. Knocking at the door puts me on edge. But I will have surveillance cameras. At least 3 of them. At least 3. One directly at the door, one out in front where you can see the cars, anybody pulling in, and then one at the angle of the house, so then you can get a nice 45-degree angle, you know. Still have a blind spot. Can't have a blind spot. Probably 4 cameras.
People approaching our door before they even have a chance to knock. Since the light was off, we weren't able to see anyone approach, and since our door lacks a peephole,
It definitely wasn't a ghost. The landlord set up cameras in the apartment.
we weren't able to see who stood on the other side of the door at this hour. Having recently graduated from college, we lost around 95% of our local friends, meaning we really were very shocked to hear someone knocking since no one really does that anymore now that they've all moved away. I'll be honest, we had been smoking a little of the ganja. We get way more into American Ninja Warrior when we do it, and it makes an all-around better viewing experience. So I'll admit that paranoia definitely didn't assist us on this particular night. At the knock, we look at each other and, having just ate dinner, we both knew neither one of us had ordered food. I go to the door and call out, "Who is it?" After a brief pause, a man whose voice I didn't recognize then calls out,
Your friends in apartment 39 sent me.
No hello, no sign of a smile in his tone, just that one sentence and nothing else. We started to get slight panic, very, very slight. We had just moved into this apartment a couple of months ago for a summer sublease while we can look for more concrete living. We're only here another month, so have made no effort at all in meeting a single neighbor of ours, minus the guy who lives above us that we met by accident one afternoon, and we haven't seen him since. So, thinking this stranger is confused or lost, I call out, "This is apartment 7, thinking maybe the lack of light means he can't really see the number on our door. Immediately he says,
I know.
and then he repeats what he says before.
Your friends in apartment 39 sent me.
Being high, I'm now frightened because he sounds like a hitman, so I'm frozen in front of the door and my roommate, fed up with the early morning interruption,
I'd be like, this 9mm sent me. So you could either decide to stay or meet the 9mm. Cause this magazine hold 23 rounds in it. Extendo.
During A&W shouts from the couch, "We don't know anything, and we don't know anyone." After a moment, the guy simply says,
Have a good night.
After this, I was a little shaken up, but I forgot all about it until the next morning when I woke up sober and full of curiosity. I thought the best way to get to the bottom of this is to go to the apartment 39 and ask. Also request that they don't come by at 1 a.m. anymore, even if they somehow already knew we're awake. Since it's Wednesday afternoon, I write a note to leave on their door in advance in case they're not home, and when finished, I leave my apartment and search for apartment 39. Well, there is no apartment 39. It doesn't go beyond apartment 38 in any of the 3 buildings. Also, the screen on the front window has been bent back. I'm not sure if these events are related, but it's a pretty big coincidence. To that very creepy stranger that knocked on my door at 1 a.m. and mentioning a non-existent apartment 39, I really hope to not meet you ever again.
1 a.m.'s crazy.
I was about 13 and was in middle school. I was living in a 3-family apartment building and had just moved there a couple of months before this had happened. There was my brother, my mom, and myself at the top floor, a man, his wife, and their son on the second floor, and then Gary on the first floor. The family on the second floor were very nice people and great neighbors. This story is about Gary. Gary was probably in his mid-30s. He was stuck in his teen years mentally. He was also a goth metalhead type guy. At first, he was a pretty welcoming neighbor, and then it all went downhill from there. It was Valentine's Day, and I was just coming up the steps to my door, and I see a bouquet of flowers with a card and a brown paper bag. I grab them before I unlock the door and go inside. I set them on my table and do my normal after-school things, and then I go to open the card. The card said, "Happy Valentine's Day. I'm madly in love with you. Love, Gary." There was a giant Hershey's dark chocolate bar in the brown bag. As a small 13-year-old, I flipped the heck out and called my mom at work right away and told her what happened. She told me to not eat the candy bar and that she was on her way.
I would even highly advise not even touching the rose or the note, because I forget what the substance is. You could touch it and then you faint. Like, it's that simple. Won't even know what happened to you at all. That's weird. This Gary's not a good Gary. I'm only thinking about Gary from SpongeBob the Snail, but he's not that. He's a weirdo.
She came right home and we called the landlord and the police. They both came around the same time and we told them what happened. They went downstairs and talked to Gary, but when they came back, they said nothing could be done because he has mental issues. But I was so scared to even be in my own home. The very next week, he started to stand outside and play his guitar and sing love songs up to our windows. He did this mostly at night, and I had school in the morning.
Somebody get him, bro.
When it started to warm up, he would lay on a blanket out in the front yard with his blow-up doll that he had intentionally went out and bought an outfit for that I had worn on some occasions, and then put the outfit on the blow-up doll. He would lay out there and do pretty much all you can imagine to this doll right in front of me and look up at my windows as he did these things. We called the landlord and the police again, and once again, they didn't do anything about this. He would try to invite me into his apartment when I would come home from school. Luckily, I had a friend that lived on my street that I would always have walk me to my apartment door. We moved a couple of months later. He continued to play his guitar and lay out with his doll.
What you are about to see
And do his creepy creeper things. I'm just glad to get the heck out of there. Creeper Gary, stay the heck away from me. The story doesn't involve me directly, but I was there when everything went down. This happened about a year ago. I used to spend every day at my best friend's apartment building, which was a kind of a weird setup. When you walk into the apartment from the hallway, there's this living room/kitchen area, and then you walk down a hallway where all the rooms were lined up next to each other. She lived in a big apartment building where each unit was set up similarly and shared a balcony with the apartment next door. Both units have a glass door that leads onto this balcony. Due to the layout, in order for each bedroom to have a window, there's an empty space with the width of the balcony between the two neighboring units that share it. This also means that your bedroom window directly looks into your neighbor's bedroom window from about 15 feet away. Now that that's all out of the way, the actual story. My friend and I were in the living room watching a movie on a Saturday night when one of her roommates scurried into the living room, looking terrified, and exclaimed, "There's a man staring at me from the window next door." She explained that all the lights in the apartment have been off all weekend, so she had assumed that all the girls next door had gone home for the weekend. She had the blinds cracked open and was laying on her bed when she saw movement from the dark room next door. She looked over, and there was a pair of eyes staring at her through the dark.
Oh, nah.
At first she thought she was nuts, but a minute later she saw a large dark arm press up against the glass, and the eyes emerged again. The lights were already off in the living room, and we were all crouched down and gathered around the glass back door to watch the windows of the apartment next door to see if anyone was inside. Sure enough, after a minute through the blinds, we saw someone moving around and flickering the lights on and off. This made us really nervous.
See, okay, check me out. So even if you couldn't get a firearm, get you a high-powered BB gun, bro. I promise you, it wouldn't, obviously kill him, but it would hurt. It would do the trick.
Because he could easily walk out into the back porch, and the only thing standing between him and us would be the glass door. We were all freaked out, but reasoned that maybe one of the girls had given her boyfriend a key card, and he was the one inside. On the other hand, the apartments were super easy to break into. You swipe a card down the lock, and boom, you're in. There were about 50 units in the building, and a huge problem with robberies. The next day, I was over again, and we heard the girls come home. We went out into the back porch and knocked on their door. When we told them what happened, their faces went pale as they explained that nobody was home and nobody should have been inside the apartment. After informing the building manager of what happened, they all gathered their belongings and went somewhere else for the night. Unfortunately, the building manager didn't care or do anything about it, but a few months later, everyone moved out.
Oh my gosh.
Nobody knew who he was or how he got into the building in the first place, since there's a security guard sitting at a desk by the front door. So, to the creepy dude who broke into the apartment next door and stared through the window, please stay away from us.
See, and that's why I would much rather pay a higher rent or mortgage being in a more secluded or safe area, me personally, so I don't have to deal with a lot of bullcrap. I'm doing that now. I live in a pretty nice area in Tacoma, Washington, where it's actually one of the nicest places in Washington, as far as in Tacoma, the city. And it's away from a lot of bullcrap that I don't have to worry about my vehicle being broken into or stolen. Washington, we have a high, I think we're number 1 or 2 out of the whole nation of car thefts. Vehicle thefts, and then I think number 3 or 5 to burglaries or something like that. It's ridiculous. So I decided to live where all the white people at. Simple as that. I was just I'm going where the white people at. I know that I live in a safe place when white people like to walk their dogs and their cats. You'll be surprised. Out at night. If they go on walks at night, you in a safe place, bruh. Guaranteed. And I'd much rather pay a steeper rent or mortgage than for me personally, than to be in an area where they do not value their things or anybody else's. Filled with jealousy. People will do crazy stuff because they're jealous. Over here, everybody make very good money. So they do their own thing and they don't care about nothing. I'm cool with that. I'm cool with that. I don't get bothered. Here to say hi.
This story happened many years ago.
Videos,
I was 19 years old and lived with my parents at home in a fairly bad neighborhood.
Thank you.
At the time, I had a very large, loving dog that was half Great Dane and half English Mastiff, who was the sweetest little angel you could ever meet, but very huge. We're talking over 5 feet on her hind legs and well over 100 pounds.
Yeah, you gotta have a dog that can protect you. Get you a big dog. See, the cool thing about having a small dog and a big dog, the big dog is for big problems. The small dog is to alert the big problem, or the one that deals with the big problems. The small dog will hear everything, anything, whatever. Get you a yapper, but a yapper that doesn't just yap. The ones that that are obedient yappers, but they definitely are keen to everything and sensitive to everything. They will alert the big dog, because the big dog will miss some things. You get you a little yapper and then a big dog. That's like the best duo.
It was one late night, and I decided that in the middle of the night, I wanted to go to the local 24-hour grocery store to get a few snacks. At the time, I didn't own a car, but I did have my license, and my father had a car. Since I was young, I figured I could take the car for a drive the few miles to the store, pick up my snacks, and be back having the car in the driveway before anyone knows I'm gone. The only issue was I knew my dog would start barking and crying if I left her alone, and when
That's why I like DoorDash. I don't use Uber Eats, but I like DoorDash. I be using DoorDash probably too much, because I'm just like, I don't want to go nowhere, man. Shout out to DoorDash. Now you don't have to go nowhere. You can have somebody else shop for you and they bring it to you, bro. I'm willing to pay that little fee.
went to the store. So I decided that I would take her with me and leave her in the car. Since it's the middle of the night, I know it's not going to be hot and all will be well. I get to the store and get out and pick up a few snacks, pay the total, and head back to the car. It's the early 2000s and my keys are on a lanyard around my neck. As I am walking quickly towards my father's car, I notice in my peripheral vision there's a man who has gotten up from a bench on the side of the building. I hear him say something, but I don't turn around and have no clue what it was. I start to quicken my pace and I wonder if I'm being paranoid. By the time I open my car door, this man was in full sprint toward.
We listen to creepy stories, DoorDash, be messing and stuff. Hey, I know. Look, I had some times with other DoorDashers actually about a week ago, and it was so unmess-upable. It was so They weren't able to mess it up, but they messed it up. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't know how they messed it up, but it was clear, concise instructions that everybody else was able to do besides those two. Oh my gosh, I was furious. Because the last person that had messed it up was this one chick, and for whatever reason she couldn't get in the door, and I was just like, it's pretty easy. Like, you call the downstairs phone, it rings my phone, I press 9, it opens the door, you're able to get in. It's simple like that. No one else has had the problem. But anyways, I had to go all the way downstairs, and there's like no connection downstairs, so I had to find where she was on the little DoorDash thing. Yeah, it do be going fast. But I had to go find her, and she was like all the way around on the other side of my apartment building. And when she got out the car, like, I'm talking about her stomach was out, Biddies was out. I was just like, yo, you're not, like, how are you functioning? Not like, what are you doing? I was kind of scared to get my food. I'm not gonna lie. I was just like, you're like half naked. It's cold, rainy, and wet outside, and everything is just hanging out right now. Like, what are we doing right now? I was like, yeah, I don't know about this one, yo. I don't know about this one, Chief.
Towards me. I slam the car door shut, and before I can even lock the door, I see a hand slam on my window, full palm. In the next split second, my beautiful, amazing, huge dog lunges from the passenger seat across my driver's seat towards the window, with teeth and barking, and I had never seen her act like that. Then I hear an, "Oh crap," before the man disappeared off into the darkness. I got home safe that night, and nothing came out of it. The neighborhood and the stores around are notorious for panhandlers and theft/robberies. So I can't tell you for sure what that person wanted from me. I don't know if they wanted to hurt me or if I was just overreacting. What I can tell you happened if I didn't.
Get you a dog going, man. Get you a dog.
Let me start this by saying I was only 16 years old and most likely shouldn't
You
have.
gotta get yourself a dog. Dogs are the best. Look, cats are cool and everything, but they don't. They'll eat your body after you die. That's what I heard. They'll eat your nose. The first thing to go. They will eat your nose. I think they wait. I think it's no longer than 3 days. If your body just sitting there lifeless, they'll just start eating you. Dogs, on the other hand, they don't do the same. Well, they don't do that unless if they're like absolutely starving and it's been like a week or two, and that's reasonable because there's no kibble in the bowl. But the cat is the first one to turn on you within 16 hours to 3 days. Insane. They're like, ooh, let me get some of that nose. I've been wanting that thing for a while.
Been working third shift in the first place. I worked at a local grocery store and I absolutely hated it. When I got the offer to move to third shift working stock crew and cashier, I jumped on the offer. It was in the middle of winter, February to be exact. I remember this well because this year in question, it happened to be snowing on Valentine's Day. I was shoveling my porch at home and slipped off and broke my ankle, so this meant when I was at work, I had to sit on a stool to work at the self-checkout. This night was a particularly cold night, and it was around 3 a.m., maybe 4 a.m., and I recognized a familiar face that came in. It was the same homeless man who came in nearly every night, and he was trying to buy alcohol. We weren't allowed to sell alcohol after 2 a.m., and I told the man that he couldn't buy it. Of course, this made him enraged, and he started calling me really ugly names, and he told me that I was going to ring him up or he would hurt me. I explained to him that it wasn't just me who wouldn't allow him to purchase the alcohol. The system literally wouldn't allow it to be purchased.
Exactly.
At this time, I abruptly remembered that my ankle was messed up. What was I going to do? Hobble away from him? The guys who worked stock crew with me were so far away that they wouldn't even hear me if I screamed. I started reaching for the phone that we used as an intercom for the store, and I pushed the button that is on the receiver. I started yelling for somebody to come up to the front, and as soon as I did, he then told me,
You just made a huge mistake.
As soon as he said that, he punched me right in the face and knocked me off my stool.
Oh my god.
I don't know if I blacked out or just blacked out this part of the memory, but I don't remember what happened next.
So, dude come in, he like, I want alcohol. It's past 2, you can't get alcohol. It's against the law. He's just like, I'm gonna hurt you if you don't give me my alcohol, blah, blah, blah. More than likely, he's already drunk or has been drinking already. She hits the intercom to ask for help. Big mistake. I'm gonna punch you in your face. Bro, what? Insanity.
Except for when I opened my eyes, my manager had him up against the wall and knocked him upside the head, and he told him he wasn't going anywhere until the cops came.
Yeah.
I was so scared. My face hurts, my ankle hurt, and now my butt literally hurts from hitting the floor. The cops came and I made my report, and he was arrested. But that didn't stop him from coming to our store, even though he was banned.
What?
He came in and taunted me for months after the attack.
What? Where's the assault charges, bruh? Like, why? Like, what? Press charges. Get him put in jail. Get money. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is going on here? This dude got detention and he's out? Like, what are we talking about?
I would look up from my cash register and just see him looking at me with his eyes looking almost evil. I felt like I constantly had to look over my back. I felt like every time I looked up, he was going to be there, and I wasn't sure what he was going to do next. Every time I think about this story, I still get upset that something as little as alcohol could make a man punch me. A man that I had seen every day since I started working third shift, and he was.
There's only so much you could do with like a restraining order and like a sheet of paper. It's just like, let's drain his bank account and or put him in jail. This assault. Charge him with assault.
Honestly a friendly guy. Well, until then. I worked there for about another year, but I honestly never went back to that store after I finally left. It still gives me the heebie-jeebies, even 11 years later. When I was in college, I worked at an after-hours emergency clinic. My shift ended at midnight, and since the stores were pretty much less crowded at that hour, I often did grocery shopping around that time. Side note, I'm a female and I was in my early 20s when this happened. I go to the local store one night after work, park in a great spot, and head towards the store. As I'm walking across the lot, I hear a male voice calling.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me.
I look to my right and see a man sitting in a blue station wagon, about 5 spaces away from where I'd parked. Having my attention now, he then says,
I'm sorry to bother you. My wife and I are trying to get home, but we've run out of gas. She's in the store now asking people for help. Could you spare a few dollars so we can get gas to go home?
Now, normally I don't mind helping out someone who's down on his luck, but something just felt so nope about this whole situation.
Trust your gut feeling. Don't double take. Don't think about it too long. Don't be them people in the movies. Trust your gut. Be like, you know, I wish I could, but I can't. Leave. Don't even wait for a rebuttal. Just wish I could. Now I can't. Bam. You gone. There's no rebuttal. No conversation. Nothing. Out of there. Skedat.
I replied that I was sorry, but I didn't have any cash.
Then leave.
I went into the store to grab the few things I needed, and the whole time I was inside, I could just not shake the uneasy feeling I had. I was completely on edge by the time I made it to the checkout line. After I paid for my items, I started to walk out, but my body just didn't want to cooperate.
Yep.
I'd take a few more steps, and then I'd stop again. I turned back to the male cashier and then said, I know I'm about to sound like such a girl, but could you see if someone would walk me out to my car? There was a really creepy guy out there earlier, and I just don't feel comfortable. He took some of my bags in his hands, and he said he'd walk me out since he didn't have any customers. To exit the store, you have to go through 2 sets of sliding double doors. We walked through the first set, and I completely stopped cold. The freaking station wagon was now parked next to my car. I told the cashier this, and he told me
Okie dokie. Peace. Gone.
he wouldn't let anything happen to me. We walk through the second set of double doors, and I start walking towards my car. About this time, the station wagon starts up, and the driver immediately pulls out of the parking spot. It was then that I noticed that there was no wife in the car, but there was another man. I don't know what these guys were planning to do, and I'm really glad I never had to find out. I'm very fortunate that that cashier was so nice enough to be my bodyguard. There's really no telling what would have happened if I went to my car alone.
They would have definitely followed you.
After putting it off for the last few and busy days, I decided to go to my local grocery store at around 9 p.m.
So I worked at a store and I would walk with all of them. What, like all the people that you work with?
p.m. last evening. I was at my house fixing a few things, and my 2 children were already in bed. As any single mom would agree, getting to go grocery shopping alone is a rare treat, and I jumped on the chance while my dad suggested I go while he was helping out. I once get to the store and quickly realized that I picked a great time to go. The parking lot was near empty, and once I got inside, I only saw a handful of store workers chatting at one of the registers in front. Not another customer in sight. Glorious. About halfway through my shopping, I noticed another customer. First one I'd seen. He was an older dude, gray around the sides and wearing what appeared to be hunting gear. Boots, camouflage pants, and a matching jacket. His hat was also camouflage, but a different type than his other clothing. I remember noticing his outfit right away, but didn't think anything of it. As I made my way through the aisles, I kept noticing that this dude would end up in the same aisle as I was. It seemed kinda weird as we were the only customers in our smaller local store at the time, so I thought to myself, how weird that this guy is on the same aisle route as me. But as minutes went on, I began to notice that this guy wasn't actually taking items off of shelves. He didn't have a car.
Such thing. 0. No such thing as a coincidence.
He had a basket, and that basket was empty.
You said like 14 years old and older ladies shopping at 9:11 p.m. Not the hunting gear. Yeah, the hunting gear guys. Sometimes with the neon orange hat.
Every time I'd glance at his general direction, he'd snap his head down or to the side.
Listing your house on the market isn't the
But yeah, there's definitely no such thing as a quinky dink. There's patterns. You gotta notice those patterns. Trust that gut feeling. Bro, what the hell? Why is everything going slow?
Store at the time, so I thought to myself, how weird that this
Really?
guy is on the same aisle route as me. But
Dude.
as minutes went on, I began to notice that
My goodness. Alright, hold on. Let's figure this thing out.
obvious that he was staring at me. I was starting to be a bit weirded out, but I thought I was being paranoid. I reminded myself that I'd seen a few employees when I entered the store, so it wasn't just me and Camo Guy in the store. I continue my shopping. This is where I thoroughly get creeped out. This guy was standing in the center of the aisle. He wasn't facing either side of where the products lined the shelves, but facing up the aisle, so when I rounded the corner, he was directly facing me. What really scared me was that he was smiling. Not just any smile though, it was this terrifying wide grin. Dead center of the aisle, about midway through, with a wild smile on his face and not moving a single muscle.
There's always some weirdo that want to try to pick on people that think that they're weaker than them and
Like a statue. I looked at him for what felt like an eternity, but was in reality probably only a few seconds. My brain just couldn't comprehend what the crap was going on here. There was no way I'd be getting past this guy without having to interact or at least say excuse me. Super freaked out, I quickly turned my cart around and I decided to make a beeline for the cash registers down a different aisle. Forget the English muffins and pitas, I wasn't going to bring those home tonight. As I get to the register and begin unloading my groceries onto the belt, the woman standing at the end of the register in the bagging area looked up from the conversation with the cashier and calmly and sweetly asked, "Hey, is everything okay?"
hell
I'm
no.
guessing I looked white as a ghost or like I was going to hurl or something. Just as I opened my mouth to describe the man in aisle 12, there was loud footsteps, running footsteps,
What?
in conjunction with the weirdest, most guttural type scream I had ever heard. It sounded almost like a howl. I wish I knew how to properly convey the sound through text. And it's the guy. Out of the corner of my eye, I see that he's running down the front area of the store behind where the baggers stand and people leave. Here's the kicker. He stops in his place about 4 to 5 feet behind the bagger. He stops yelling for a moment and just blankly stares. No words, abrupt stop to the scream/yell. He stopped dead in his tracks and just stared in our general direction. He had a weird look in his eyes. I pulled my phone out at this point because truthfully I didn't know if this guy was on something or what he would do next.
Yeah, he definitely got to be on something. Some bath salts, some heroin, crackhead, something.
From the look on her face, the cashier was also creeped out. Then, just as quickly as he stopped, he started screaming again and started running again. He ran right out of the doors of the store. Another cashier got out from behind his register and kinda followed his path, looking out the front window into the parking lot. He turned around and then said, "I don't see him anywhere." This would have only been a mere seconds after he ran out the doors. That same cashier walked me to my car, helped me unload my groceries, and watched as I drove away.
He on something. He off a bean. He off of something. Something.
It was very clear he was just as shaken as I was over the howling and the guy's actions in front of the store. I told him about how I'd seen that man frozen in a big weird smile just before coming to the registers. He visibly shivered. It's taken me until this morning to truly realize just how strange this whole situation actually was. So did that grocery store howler Please do your shopping when I'm not around. This unsettling encounter happened when I was 11. I should mention that I was not a mature 11-year-old, as I was still very much a little kid at that age, and definitely looked the part. Messy hair, small and gangly, and no signs of puberty yet. So there was absolutely no way anyone could possibly mistake me for anything but a little kid, which is important to the story. Anyway, one evening,
I hit puberty like 7 times, bro. It took, like, my voice was still cracking when I was like 21. I had puberty multiple times.
my mom took me grocery shopping with her. We were in the meat department when all of a sudden one of the employees came up to us and started chatting with my mom. He looked to be in his early to mid-20s and he was asking my mom all kinds of questions about me. How old I was, where I went to school, if I had a daddy, and he kept staring at me and saying what a beautiful little girl I was. I just thought he was being nice, and I couldn't understand why my mom was being so bothered. So he followed us around the store while we shopped and kept talking to her even though my mom was clearly trying to ignore him. He kept asking where I went to school and my mom would only say, "I don't know the name of her school." I interrupted and began to tell the school that I go to, not realizing why she was playing dumb. He smiled, knelt down, and asked if he could hold me. My mom just grabbed my hand and started power walking away while pushing the car.
So, look, this is to be extremely frank. Me as a black man growing up in the society that we are in, right? My parents always taught me to never tell our business, don't talk to strangers, got to know where you live, got to know the emergency numbers, and where to go if there is an emergency and my parents aren't available, but to never tell anything about personal business. And the first thing this little girl says is where she go to school. Crazy. Oh my goodness, man.
With her other hand. By now I knew something was wrong and I was getting scared. I'd never seen my mom like this before. She was tight-lipped and pale and was totally angry. She quickly paid for our groceries and dragged me out of the store. He then followed us out to the car. He asked my mom if we needed help loading our groceries in the trunk, and she just snapped. She yelled at him to leave us alone or else she would call the manager. He finally backed off, and on the ride home I got yelled at for telling him what school I went to.
Exactly.
My mom was nearly in tears at this point, and she told me that he was a dangerous man and to tell my teachers right away if I ever saw him in or around my school. She had always taken me to school and picked me up, but she walked me inside to and from class after that. It took me many years to figure out that this guy was a pedo, and he probably wanted to know where I went to school so he could abduct me. Thank God that never happened. I've worked at the same grocery store for the last 4.5 years of my life. Of course, I've seen some pretty crazy people come in and whatnot, but this absolutely takes the cake for me. It was a regular work shift for me as a cashier, with me working short amounts of hours whereas I was 16. I tended to keep the same schedule every week because I liked the days I worked, and it kept me on the ball, being in school and all. Since I worked during the day on weekends, I usually would see the same few regulars, which was not uncommon at all for me. There was one customer that usually stood out to me though. I never caught his name, but it was this older man, maybe in his late 60s I'd say. This same customer would come into my register lane every single week on the same day around the same times. Not only that, but he would also buy the exact same groceries every single week, and he would make me bag them to his liking. Honestly, I never even thought twice about this old man because he seemed pretty harmless and just super friendly. I was wrong. This one specific shift is where things went insanely south. I was on my register and I see him walking over per usual. He starts setting things on the belt. The normal conversation and whatnot, and then he asks when I go on my break. Not only did I not really know for sure, but even if I had, I wouldn't have given that information out to this stranger.
I have something in my car for you. You should come out on your break and take it. I'll wait for you.
Oh, I have no idea when I'm going to be going on break. It could be hours.
That's okay. You know what? I have a better idea. I will get it for you and bring it in here.
Yeah, let me see it. So all the cameras could see, all the people could see. Bring whatever you got from your trunk here. I don't know why it's in your trunk, but bring it over here.
Now, I really didn't know how to take this situation, so I notified my manager about this interaction and to keep an eye out for him. Lo and behold, he comes right back in about 15 minutes with a manila folder in his hand. This customer stands right at the end of my lane and watches me for over an hour, just standing there waiting for me, not making small talk with other customers or even making eye contact. The manager has been watching him and finally pulls him aside and says it's time for him to leave.
Facts.
The customer explains that he has something for me, and he instructs my supervisor to give it to me when possible. My manager says of course, and he leaves. Mind you, my girlfriend is actually currently working in a separate department, and she's notified and comes over. I will never forget what I see next while I was still cashiering. My manager and my girlfriend open up the manila folder, and the color from their faces immediately drain. I see them shuffling through tons of papers until finally my girlfriend snatches the folder and rips it in two. My manager pulls me off the register, and he tells me what the man had left. It turns out he had written hundreds and hundreds of very inappropriate love poems for me, as well as about his deceased mother. This man had been obsessed with me. I felt really sick to my stomach and I wanted to throw up immediately. Later on, the police come and they ask me some questions about the incidents, and I give them my statements and such. They eventually found him on our camera system from earlier that day, and they had enough evidence to give me the option to file a restraining order on him, as well as legally banning him from our store. The police eventually contacted him, and when they asked him to confirm what he was trying to give me, he instantly hung up after talking for some time with the cop. I haven't seen this man since, thank God.
Yeah. I have no words, because I don't think I've heard much of anything like that where an old man was attracted to another guy and then had all types of craziness in monologue form about how they're professing their love and what they want to do, and bro, what?
God, and I never plan to again. My family is from a very small southern town. They've always lived around here, and in the early 70s it was kind of the place where everyone knew all of their neighbors. My grandpa owned his own grocery store. It was called Bill's Food Center. Everyone in the town would come by regularly and get their groceries and even stay and chat with him for a little bit. My mom had worked the cash register regularly from her early teens on, so she knew all of the regulars and she could always tell when someone hadn't been there before. So when two men came in that she had never seen before, she made sure to welcome them and asked if they needed help finding anything. She said that she remembered being very creeped out by them from the beginning. She asked if they needed help finding anything, and the older one replied,
Nah, sweetie, we'll let you know when we find what we need.
As they checked out, the older man, who she described as mid to late 30s, kept asking her increasingly personal questions. She was polite but tried to give really vague general answers. The younger man with him was in his early 20s and never spoke, just always went along with what the other man said. They came in for items every day for about 4 days, and they always creeped her out, but she never felt threatened or too weirded out until the last day. The older man said he could use some help now and explained that they were going on
Paperwork can be overwhelming. That's why Busy is such a lifesaver. They handle all of your filing and compliance requirements, so you don't have to
a camping trip and needed some help picking out some supplies. He said that they needed some really strong rope and some duct tape. He explained that he liked to shoot guns and needed the duct tape to wrap around his hands while shooting. She felt that the explanation was odd, but nevertheless, she helped them pick out the supplies and check them out. She got such bad vibes from them that day that when they left, she made sure to memorize their license plate just in case. A few days later, a cashier at another local store down the street from my grandpa's went missing. After searching for a few days, the police found her body near a local river. She was bound with duct tape, barbed wire, and rope, almost exactly like what my mom remembered selling the two men. When she read about it in the Sunday paper, her stomach dropped. She immediately felt that she knew the two men were responsible. She told my grandpa she knew who was responsible. She told my grandpa she knew who was responsible. She told my grandpa she knew who was responsible. She told my grandpa she knew who was responsible. She told my grandpa she knew who was responsible. She told my grandpa she knew who was responsible. She told my grandpa she knew who was responsible. She told my grandpa she knew who was responsible. She told my grandpa she knew who was responsible. She told my grandpa she knew who was responsible. She told my grandpa she knew who was responsible. She told my grandpa she knew who was responsible. She told my grandpa she knew who was responsible. She told my grandpa she knew who was responsible. She told my grandpa she knew who was responsible. She told my grandpa she knew who was responsible. She told my grandpa she knew who was responsible. She told my grandpa she knew who was responsible. She told my grandpa she She knew the two strange men were somehow involved. My grandpa was skeptical at first, but my mom was so adamant that he eventually caved and they went to the police. My mom was then questioned extensively by a detective. It took some time, but the police eventually caught up with the men and they were eventually found guilty. My mom was so shaken up about the whole ordeal that she refused to work in the store alone from then on. She was even more alarmed when the police informed her that the men were casing my grandpa's store before ultimately deciding on the other one. Growing up as a young lad and just learning to drive, my advisor told me the number one rule when entering a vehicle: check the back seat. I'm not sure if he was being genuine or...
I check the back seat, especially if it's dark. I make sure, like, I put my hand in the back seat. Even when I look back, I'm like, nope. I put my hand all the way in the back seat, wrestle it around, make sure there ain't nothing back there, bro. You can never trust it, because what could happen? Someone break into your car. They nestle themselves in the back. They lock the door just to make sure that you know that it's locked when you come back. They lock the door. You drive all the way home, not knowing. You get all comfortable. You probably texting on your phone when you're in parking garage, parking lot, whatever it is. And they got you right there. You know what I'm saying? And then they weaseled themselves into your place, or they have your vehicle and they take you somewhere. Bro, there is so much that could happen. Check your back seats.
or if he was simply trying to spook me, but this number one rule was always check the back seat of the vehicle which you're about to drive, as to not have some weirdo creep up on you. Thinking back on it now, I really wish I had taken him more seriously. I had just gotten my very first car, a running and well taken care of 2004 Pontiac Grand Prix. Now, my family isn't exactly one that has a lot of money, but we were able to acquire this car at a pretty decent price. At 170k miles, it will make for a decent starter vehicle. Growing up in Minnesota, the atmosphere was never really anything unnerving, but the winters were very harsh. This particular winter reached negative 30 degrees. It wasn't anything wonderful. I'm definitely not one for snow, but I always wondered why I was born in Minnesota. Although the large cities are usually a lot
I think it's 2004, not 2024.
worse than where I lived, the town I was in didn't fare all that well for me either. It was the end of a work week for me. As a student who just acquired their very first vehicle, I was working my tail off in order to pay my parents back for the money they dropped on this car for me. I was working between 30 to 40 hours a week with school. I worked at a grocery store. The store wasn't a multi-million-dollar store by any means. It was a ma and pa owned grocery store only known to the people of the town that I lived in. They opened at 6 a.m. and closed at 10 p.m. I was usually working until close after I got out of school. This particular night, I didn't get out of there until around 10:45 to 11 p.m. due to a delivery truck which ran late, and I had to get products on the shelf by the end of the night. As I left the store and entered my car that night, I remembered that I forgot to clock out. If I didn't clock out, I would have to go through the process of signing a sheet saying that I didn't clock out and my projected hours would be all funky, and it wasn't something I wanted to deal with. Getting out of my car and heading back towards the building, I saw some men walking around the parking lot. I made sure to do that fast-paced walk that everyone does when they get anxious in order to reach the front door without attracting too much attention from the strange man. Unlocking the front door, I looked back and saw that the man continued his walk across the parking lot, but he had craned his neck back in order to watch me. Every hair on my body stood on end, and I got really creeped out. I watched way too many scary shows and movies at the time, and everything cast a pretty bad feeling upon me. I unlocked the door and made my way inside and took a few deep breaths in order to slow my heart rate. Okay, just clock out, do your thing, and get back to your car and you're golden. I run to the back, do just as I needed to, straighten up a few things which I had previously overlooked while doing my cleaning up for the night, and went back outside to my car. As I unlocked the door, I did a quick sweep of the parking lot, and the strange man was gone. Nowhere to be seen. Thank God, I didn't have to worry about him anymore. I did a quick walk to my car, opened the door, and sat down with an anxious shiver. I slid the key in the ignition, started my car, and fiddled with the radio for about a minute before switching it into reverse and looking into my rear view to make sure I wasn't going to hit anyone in this empty parking lot. What I saw in my rear view wasn't a car or a set of headlights, but instead, it was a pair of eyes looking right back at me. Never in my life.
Oh boy, what? I'd probably turn around so fast that I would like tweak my back. Oh my gosh, hey, that's not a fear, but that's something that like, oh my gosh, I would hate to see just like a set of eyes just looking back at you. You know how there's like some people with like not whites around their eyes, but yellow. Nasty.
Have I jerked around so quickly. My heart felt like it exploded in my chest and my stomach did a 920. I threw it in park and pretty much crawled out of my car since my quick-moving feet couldn't find traction. I ran about 100 feet before turning around to see the man opening the back door of my car take a step out and stroll out of the parking lot. He never looked back at me, he just kept walking. I get on the phone and call my parents and I told them everything. I had to explain myself a few times due to my fast, anxious talking and my shivering from the crisp air. They ended up calling the cops for me, and I had to re-explain myself to an annoyed-looking, rather heavy-set officer. They searched my car, and they ended up finding a needle and a twine string in my back seat.
Oh no.
The man was a junkie. Holy crap. Never in my life had I thought I would come into contact with a tweaker in my town. I knew they existed, but never had I thought one would have this much impact on me. I ended up selling my car due to my anxiety getting the best of me every time I entered that car from that point on. From now on, I will absolutely check my back seat before ever getting into any car.
See, either it's gonna be one or two things. You're either gonna learn from the lesson or you're gonna earn from the lesson. This is a lesson to be learned. Check your back seats. Double check anything. Gut feeling, check. Situational awareness, check. Don't have unnecessary conversation, check.
One day I stopped at the grocery store on my way home from the community college I go to. I went to the store all the time, and so I didn't think that this trip would be any different.
Yeah.
I parked my car. I walked into the area inside the store where the carts are and took one. Right as I was about to turn around to walk in the main doors and start shopping, a man walked up to me. I noticed he was wearing reflective gear and I could see the store logo on part of his jacket, so I immediately recognized him as one of the cart collectors. He looked like he was about 60 years old. He told me he had seen me around lately and he wanted to know my name. His tone was friendly, and I'm more on the introverted side, so at this point, I thought the fact that I was already uncomfortable was just because that's how I am, and it didn't even faze me until later how weird it is for a 60-year-old man to tell a 19-year-old girl that you've seen them around. My mind naturally veers towards, let's get out of this conversation with a stranger as quick as possible without actually getting the chance to really process what they said to me. So, I told him my first name. He told me his. Then, he started asking how old I was, if I lived around here, if I was in school right now. I awkwardly answered these questions and was as vague as I could be. At this point, I was
Here's how you answer this question. I don't feel comfortable with answering these questions. I don't know you. Simple. I don't know why people are so adapt to giving up information. Like, you'll give it to a random stranger, but be heated that someone hits you up in the DMs for your number, but you tell them where you live in person. Crazy. Like, what kind of backwards stuff is going on? Hush the lips. Don't give up any information. People are weird, bro.
extremely uncomfortable with the situation, even though he was still presenting everything as normal and friendly. It was in the middle of the day, so it was less busy and nobody was really around. I held onto the cart in a way that implied I'd like to go into the store now and move on with my life, and he recognized this, but then said something along the lines of, "Next time you're here, we should exchange numbers or something." And then he made some coy comment about how he'd like to have a friendship, but it wouldn't be a relationship because that would be weird. I didn't really remember the specifics of that comment because my short-term memory tossed that shit away immediately. I didn't have the guts to tell him no, but I knew at this point that I'd be making an effort to not run into him again, so I told him sure and walked into the store. So many things I could have done differently.
A lot of men cannot read between the lines, and there's a lot of people that are very, 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 very socially unaware that they don't see social cues. So you can't expect a dude that is a forward-thinking person to understand the in between the lines. You got to be very direct with men. You can't be like, "Oh, maybe next time," when you completely feel creeped out and don't ever want to see this person ever again. Be like, "No, I don't. I'm very uninterested. Appreciate it. Gotta go. Bye." Oh, possibly, maybe, kind of, sort of. That dude in his head is like, "I got a chance." Like, don't do that.
In this situation, but hindsight's 2020, I guess.
So I'm finna go. I'm about to pass out. Yeah, I appreciate you very much. You should stop by more often. I do these live streamies sometime in the evening. Usually it's earlier, but not as late. I try not to, at least. First live I've seen. I'm usually watching your Stray Kids videos. My bad. I'm watching everything. Yeah, hey, I get it. But I appreciate you very much. Have a wonderful, blessed night. Have a wonderful rest. All that good stuff.
Guess. In the store, I was pretty shaky. I was processing. I actually ended up walking up to a girl who had helped me find stuff in the past who worked there, telling her what happened and basically just needing validation that what had just happened was inappropriate. I knew it was, but I needed that extra person to tell me. So I'm grateful that she was kind enough to listen and tell me, yeah, that's really freaking weird. I bought the few things I needed. I thankfully did not run into him again on my way to the car. When I got home, I immediately called the store and told the manager what happened. Before I even told the manager his name, he basically implied that he already knew the employee I'd encountered. This made me ask if the cart collector had done this before, and the manager said no. So, I don't know if the manager just can't tell me those kind of things, or maybe he had a record before he even started working there, or maybe it was both. I'm not sure.
You said, "Not gonna lie, I'm wondering what your subscribers should call you." My name is Delavier. Just like that. That's how you say my name, at least. It's Delavier. But that's it. Just my name. I don't have any, like... I feel like my name is cool enough, so I don't feel like I need, like, a nickname or anything, but Delavier is fine.
Either way, the manager told me that they would do something about this. I have yet to find out what they did because I haven't gone back to that particular store since.
No problem. I got you.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's video. And if
Hey, but it was a short stream today. I appreciate everybody for stopping by, keeping me company. I'm definitely gonna, like I said, it's gonna be some daily streams until I go off for my little vacation in the next week and a half. Actually, 2 weeks. In the next 2 weeks. So I'm gonna make sure I schedule post a lot of things before I leave, and make sure I'm staying up to date with all the scheduled posts and recommendations and exclusive videos on Patreon. Appreciate everybody and the VIPs and tuning in and commenting and engaging. It helps a lot. Appreciate it. It makes me feel like I'm doing something. But yeah, thank you everybody. And have a wonderful night. and make sure you tell the people you love them, because they cannot read your mind. So I'll catch you guys.